typed a message up in the box. Actually, PGP's here, so I should shut the fuck up. So this is
I'm here.
regarding my
I'm here,
policy.
Finn.
What's up, PGP, man?
Hi.
Yeah, sorry guys, I've been completely slammed recently, but I'm here to answer questions. So.
Yeah, what are you apologizing for? We understand.
There were people here earlier saying that Bitfinex is insolvent.
No, that's false.
Get the
But
fuck out.
we would
Fuck
like
off,
to hear
that's,
about the.
What?
That's completely false, Viper. You're just talking shit.
Is
but
that right, Swap Man? Okay, yep, cool.
Yeah, you're completely lying right now. We had the discussion we had. The discussion we had was completely different, and when no one's saying that Bitfinex currently is insolvent. Nobody said that. But
I didn't say that. Ask Chris J. He was here. PGP just asked Chris J. All good.
Chris J told me. So, but also I understand that Swap admitted to basically just kind of trolling. So, whatever.
No, Swap Man didn't. It was Maven. It wasn't Swap Man. It was Maven.
Whoever,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. But
I really don't care.
Yeah. Anyway,
so I'm here to answer questions for you. The first thing is that yes, we are solvent. Yes, there's positive shareholder equity. And since we did the redemption, I've been able to restart conversations with potential auditors who are much more interested in working with us now. So I expect to have an announcement within the next few weeks of a major auditing firm to audit our books so that we can prove that we're solvent to the rest of the world. So
is it KMPG?
I mean, we're talking to them. I mean, we're talking to 3 of the big 4 plus another one that's really big. They're not a traditional big 4, but they're still have big global auditor. So yeah, so I have nothing to hide there. I stake my reputation and my CFA charter on it. I mean, Bitfinex is solvent. Our biggest issue right now is that the traditional channels that we've been using to do dollar remittances have basically been are unavailable to us now, and that really sucks. That's not really my department, but it kind of happened kind of suddenly, and we're scrambling to make use of other channels, of which we have, but unfortunately, ramping them up takes time. So there are withdrawals going out. They're just, it's just kind of a trickle right now, but it's gonna ramp up. And we don't have, you'd be surprised. There's not like a gajillion people lined up at the door to get out. There's
no problem with Bitcoin withdrawals, right?
No, Bitcoin withdrawals are fine. Litecoin withdrawals are fine. So, yeah, I mean, look, the problem is our prices, we're trading about, 80, 90 basis points higher in Stamp right now. So, so buying Bitcoin, pulling it out and selling it elsewhere and getting your money out, you're taking about you're taking like a 1% haircut on that. Which I understand. You can, of course, Tether's also having a similar problem because we use similar banks. But,
is there a post somewhere explaining what this is?
I'm going to put up a post in the next hour or two. So, wanted to get more information, wanted to confirm that we actually have other channels where money is flowing out. It is, but it's not a lot. But we're gonna get it out the door. But we're gonna be doing a few other things to help facilitate this. I mean, I can get into a whole discussion about correspondent banks and what I personally think about this whole thing, and I'm happy to do that. But just from an informational perspective, our goal is to create as many possible options for our users right now. We hope to be able to return to a model of free-flowing U.S. dollar remittances. It might take a while for us to get there. We have other channels, like I said, third-party payment processors that we can use. We're also opening up other currencies. So right now, anybody that wants to take their money in Swiss francs or Hong Kong dollars, we can do that today. Waiting on confirmation perhaps tomorrow for yen and Aussie dollar, euro, hopefully next week. So, you have to pay the bank spread, but like euro is, 20 basis points. It's not huge. And we'll be able to start remitting euros. I think that this situation is going to result in us listing other currency pairs.
Nice.
Which is something we've wanted to do for a while anyway. But
do you have
it just, in the interest of making sure that we have mechanisms for our customers to get their money out, if that's what they want to do, we're going to make everything that's in our power, everything that's possible that we can do, we'll make available to people. People can choose. But there's nothing, we are not being singled out per se. It's just,
It's the industry.
Yeah, it's the industry as a whole, and I can get into a whole discussion about that in a little bit. But it really sucks. And what's making it even more difficult right now is that the whole banking industry in Taiwan is going through a whole sort of AML review, AML and KYC review by the central bank. So they're doing
Taiwan.
Yeah. So there's a whole. I can get a link for you on that, but there's all that's slowing up our ability to kind of rejigger what we do in the back office. So that's an unfortunate confluence of events as well. But we have other mechanisms. We have a lot of people that have reached out and offered their help, especially a lot of shareholders that have banking relationships and other things that they can help us out with. So we're gonna figure this out. But it does bring into question, the long-term viability of Bitcoin trading versus U.S. dollars in the long run. I mean, it's the reference price that people want to do, but the reality is that it's just getting harder and harder to move money around. And when banks figure out that it's for crypto, they shut you down, whether it's domestically, internationally, or what have you. And even the ones in the U.S., even people like Gemini, they just changed banks. Coinbase basically completely relying on one captive bank, Silicon Valley Bank, basically. Others are, Kraken can only do dollars through Synapse and only from U.S. people. It's really, really limited. So I don't know.
Can I throw out a
down
wild
the
card here?
gateways from the euro, whatever fiat currency to whatever virtual currency.
And maybe I think that euro.
The euro's going to die before Bitfinex does. I'm gonna throw out a wild card. What about SDRs?
Oh, that would be cool. Except if only I could actually deliver SDRs.
I think you could do it.
No, you can't.
I mean, I
Have
could
you
deliver
thought about it?
basket
So,
of currencies, but I couldn't deliver SDRs.
PGP, why did you guys withdraw the lawsuit against Wells Fargo? You started this fight.
I'll tell you
against
what.
it, but then you stopped it. Why?
It's because we just thought about it, and we need to focus our energies on being party to a lawsuit, especially an emergency one like this, which is a complete distraction for everybody. And it's
Well, why did you start in the first place then?
because we wanted to rattle their cage. We wanted to let them know that that stonewalling us in silence is not acceptable. And we got answers from them. We understand. We couldn't even get a policy statement out of Wells Fargo. Right now we know. They just don't want to.
What's their policy?
Well,
They don't probably have one.
Well,
They're just making it up.
apparently they have a new policy where they're just prohibiting all virtual currency exchange business, and that basically they're moving away from servicing MSBs in general. So this is the thing. I mean, Bitcoin at the very top level, Bitcoin is just a payment network. I mean, Bitcoin in many ways is like PayPal or something like that, from the standpoint of it being a non-bank institution where people are able to move value between each other. An MSB, money service business.
Banks are scared.
They're scared for a couple of, I think, good reasons. One is that the policy from the government of the United States is really amorphous, and the banks have been held accountable for their actions as correspondents in a lot of other money laundering and criminal criminal cases, right? A la drug cartel, blah blah blah. Or the Fonseca papers and other things, or UBS with like tax evasion with U.S. citizens, things like that. There is this sense that, well, if they're even just the correspondent, which is they're just routing payments for other banks, right? The banks presumably have done the KYC on their own customers. The problem is that they don't have a safe harbor from the government on routing those payments. So basically, if they think like there's any risk to them potentially from a compliance standpoint, and it's really money laundering is their biggest concern, then they're just going to say we don't want the business. And even though it's kind of like an oligopoly of banks that get to do this correspondent banking business, nonetheless they're private institutions and they have the right, I guess, individually to decide, which payments to route and which ones not to route. So when we sought this injunctive relief, we thought that at least our lawyers thought that the tortious interference concept might give us a temporary stay where we could at least keep payments going while we sought alternatives. But at the end of the day, we recognize that as private institutions, Wells Fargo can do this if they want. The problem here is not really Wells Fargo, it's the system. And there are other correspondent banks that won't do business with us. Wells Fargo just happens to be the last one available to us with our banks in Taiwan. And we thought everything was fine, but apparently it's not. So that's basically it. So the question is, do we want to piss away more shareholder money on a lawsuit that will be very expensive to pursue? Or do we take a different tack to this? Because we've spoken to a lot of people in the industry that they all agree that this is an issue. And in fact, the banks themselves would love it if they could get safe harbor on this, because they want to do more business too. This lack of policy on the liabilities associated with payments going through correspondence is choking off not only the Bitcoin industry overseas, at least in dollar terms, but also, it's a huge problem for trade finance in a lot of parts of the world where a lot of these countries are trying to sell goods, export, import, have shitty local currencies. They do things in US dollars, in hard currency, but if they can't move money around, because these correspondent banks, it really affects the economies of a lot of smaller countries. The Caribbean is at risk of losing correspondent banking services. Malta recently lost correspondent banking services for USD. So 4 banks just decided to cut off Malta, for example. Now they do online gambling. Gambling is legal there, right? And so a lot of online gambling companies register there. Well, but online gambling is illegal in the U.S., despite the fact that they're not accepting money from U.S. persons. They just want to send dollars from one foreign jurisdiction to another. But the correspondent banks are, have a stranglehold in that process.
PGP, do you think Roger Virginia or Jihan Wu Tang is at all behind any of this bullshit?
No. We have reason to believe that they themselves are actually similarly affected by these problems, believe it or not. We know that there are major mining concerns that also work in Taiwan, who they themselves have also had banking cut off.
So you guys don't just have a backup bank you can just switch all the USD out transfers to that doesn't use Wells Fargo as the correspondent bank?
We do, but they use other correspondents, and those banks are afraid to test those relationships. So it's a lot of cajoling. It's a lot of work we have to do. We have a lot of other tricks. Okay, so being the Bitcoin business is really about playing cat and mouse with the correspondent banks. It's always been that. But the problem with becoming big, and also we have massive balances that we hold with the banks, is that we can't fly under the radar anymore, and that's a problem. So we are in some senses a victim of our own success vis-a-vis correspondent banks. So it's not to say there's not other paths, and we will pursue them. There are good long-term strategies to pursue. They're just unfortunately nothing that we can implement in a matter of weeks. Now we do have emergency measures that we can take advantage of, and we do have other channels available to us, except that ramping them up right now turns out to be difficult because of this other issue in Taiwan of there's right now in Taiwan, there's a moratorium countrywide moratorium on banks opening up new offshore accounts. As an example. So even if we want to register some new corporate entities, move some money around, things that we would normally do, we're all that is slowed down right now for us. So that's like bad timing. So
sounds like trying to legally sell weed like it is now because the feds are against it, but the states have it legal. So you got these people like they don't maintain any bank balances and they deal everything in cash. They're moving around like massive amounts of fiat just in physical form, and and when they do with banks, they go to different ones in order to transfer money, and they try to make sure that it's an unaffiliated account. And
yeah, I mean it sucks, because our banks in Taiwan love our business. We carry really big balances with them, and guess what? Interest rates are not zero anymore, right? So
4K Bitwall on Finex just popped up.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh,
To the moon.
boom!
right, so you get interest off that float.
Boom,
If you
suck it
can't
like
keep
a
the
nigga.
money in the bank, then you miss out on all that interest.
Close
Well,
all
look,
hedges, batten the hatches, close
they
the
want
short orders.
they want our business. They want to figure out, but the correspondent banks are their lifeblood. I mean, we're an increasingly important account for some of our banks, but they still have a lot of other customers that need to do dollar remittances, so they're not going to risk that business for us. I mean, they're certainly partners in trying to help us figure out additional solutions, but they themselves are not only their hands tied from a relationship standpoint with the correspondents, but also just there's just this process going on with the Taiwanese banks and authorities. Now, by the way, I should point out that we have really good relationships with the government, with the law enforcement there. We're Tether is involved in a national project over there, which will be hopefully announced very shortly. So there's
Tether,
yeah. So
still trying to get verified over there.
Dude, really? Because
Yeah,
I
haven't heard anything back from them
I thought they requested to do a video conference with you.
Yeah, they did a while ago, and the last time that their account was logged on Skype was like over 2 weeks ago, and I just haven't heard anything back from him.
Bjorn's there, dude. I mean, is that Brandon or Chris in here?
Yep, we're here.
Hey, Brandon, can
That was 3 weeks ago now.
Can you just follow up on this for Dark? I want to get this done. I want to get him verified. This is BS.
Who's speaking?
Dark Eternal.
Dark Eternal.
Dark Eternal.
Me.
Okay, yeah. Private message me.
Just get him hooked up with Bjorn or Matt or whoever needs to do the video conference with him to verify his identity. Okay, please.
Got it.
So people that are confused right now, basically Tether is Finex, right?
No, it's not. But we bank with the same banks. So we've actually part of our effort with Wells Fargo is also to get them to the table and say, look, we just want to explain to you. First off, Tether is not a cryptocurrency exchange. And this is kind of where we learned more about their stance on this. It's interesting. It costs us a lot of money just to get this information out of them. But basically, they say, okay, sure, Tether's not a crypto exchange, but it is an MSB.
Am I messaging here now?
What's that?
Colonel Mayhem.
Okay.
Chat killer.
But that's what it is. Look, I mean, Tether is nothing more than PayPal on the blockchain. That's what it is. But the whole point is that they don't want to bank offshore PayPals, even blockchain or no blockchain. They view the risk of doing correspondent banking on behalf of any MSB, like an Alipay or whatever, any of that stuff is really there's just too much compliance risk for them in their mind. And that's largely because the regulations are broken. And there's been numerous articles about this. And the IMF has written about it. The FATF put out a circular to all the member banks recently saying, look, you have to look at customers one by one. You can't paint industries with broad brushstrokes. Just to say that you won't bank MSBs is not good practice. Now, FATF they're not regulators or rule makers, but this is a recognized problem from government. Like I said, it affects more than just Bitcoin or Tether. It affects anybody in the payment space, and it was just really frustrating because if you think about it, there's been a huge sort of fintech boom in payments. Whether it's like Dwola, Venmo, whatever, remittance app, this, that, and the other day, nothing to do with crypto. But a lot of this stuff, these are basically payment solutions, and they have such a hard time getting banked, where they have to go through these extremely sort of Byzantine channels for money transmission licenses state by state. This is why the OCC has recently put forward this a new banking charter that they're still finalizing the rules, but basically a fintech national banking charter where you can get a special purpose national bank charter that really for basically limited purposes, mainly aimed at the fintech industry in the burgeoning payment space. Now,
PGP,
yeah.
I'm sorry to go a little OT, but what's your stance on UASF?
I'm personally in support of USAF, both on Litecoin and on Bitcoin, but I cannot speak for I can't speak for Bitfinex on that quite yet.
Okay, will there be an announcement soon on what you guys plan to do?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, we talked about it. We talked about it today. We just don't want to be too political. I would say there's a lot of support for it amongst individuals within Bitfinex. But to get us to start flagging support from our nodes, I'm just not sure we want to wade into that political battle right now quite yet. But the people that matter know that we're certainly sympathetic. And we think that the rules should be determined by the users and not by the miners. The miners are there to confirm the rules. Miners are there for us to tell us that we're all upgraded, we're ready. That's what they're there to tell, not to politically decide on which rules they like and which ones they don't. So that's how we feel in general. We're just not sure. We just can't specifically endorse BIP 148 quite yet, but I would say that we're very sympathetic.
Quick tangent, PGP, are USD deposits still available on Finex?
Deposits are flowing fine, yes.
Are those still going through Wells Fargo then?
The correspondence system is very arcane. Okay, so let's just talk about a hypothetical deposit. Let's say, and I'd like to point out that only about 15% of our dollar flows come into and out of the United States itself, right? So we really don't do a lot with domestic U.S. persons. Although, and we actually are working on a good sort of permanent solution for deposits and withdrawals within for people in the U.S. But like I said, that's a tiny percent of our, not tiny, but it's a small percentage of our U.S. dollar flows. Most of it's people offshore, right? So they, but a lot of people like to trade Bitcoin in dollars, or they like to be dollar denominated, despite what their local currency might be. But the problem is that for us in Taiwan to send money to, say, somebody who lives in, say, to their dollar account in Britain, for example, so what happens is that there's a 4-step process. Our bank originates, then it goes to our bank's correspondent, which they have to have an account. They basically a bank. It's like a bank's bank, right? And then the correspondent then routes it to. Now, if the correspondent bank also happens to have the recipient's bank as a customer, then there's only one correspondent. But in many cases, especially when you're dealing with international remittances like this, they're not don't have a direct relationship with the receiver's bank. So they have to send it to another correspondent who does have that relationship. And so the rule that the Fed made is that dollar flows have to basically, offshore dollar flows, even if it's offshore to offshore, has to come onshore, and it has to move between, and basically has to settle onshore between the banks that act as the intermediaries. So in a lot of situations, you basically have two correspondent banks involved in completing that transaction. The one that has the principal liability for anything having to do with that flow is the one that first allows the payment flow into the Fed network, right? So if it's coming in from offshore, that's the border. That's where they're going to frisk you, And then if they have to pass it on to somebody else to get it back outside of the United States, that second leg of the correspondent piece doesn't really have the same level of scrutiny. At least that is how it's been explained to us, which comports with the idea that Wells, for example, would be blocking our outbound wires, but inbound wires they're allowing to flow out because they're just the second leg in that correspondent journey. They don't really feel like they have any liability. If they don't feel like they have liability, they have no reason not to let it through. Why not? So there is an asymmetry there, which is frustrating. But there it is.
Thanks.
So you can't really just say that maybe in the next week or next 3 weeks USD flows will be nice and fine and everything's okay. You can't say anything like that. And
I know I can't say that unequivocally, but I can say that it's going to improve. Okay, we've got a couple of we've got somebody who can handle the smaller wires for us, kind of, because that's a logistical headache, right? Even the small ones. I mean, okay, let me give you some statistics, which I'm happy to share with you guys. So currently, we have 201 customers waiting on wires. And of that, the top 10 comprise $8.7 million of it. Okay? The bottom 55% of these people, right? So 110 of these 210 are wires for less than 10K. So I mean, so we have, it's very heavily concentrated at the top. Those are all people that we talk to on a daily basis. They know what's going on. We're working with them the best we can, and we have a couple of mechanisms for doing largish wires to corporate customers. We have other facilities for doing small wires to aggregate small wires and get those out to our smaller customers. It's the ones in the middle that we're trying to really work on right now. So they are flowing out. It's just kind of a trickle. But relative to the size, maybe we're processing about 15% of the wires that are outstanding on a per diem basis right now, in terms of total gross dollars. So I mean, they are flowing, and we're going to ramp this back up. But and by the way, we have faced problems like this in the past. It's just that we had the ability to hot swap into other solutions without any of the regulatory overhead that's going on in Taiwan right now. So that's slowing a lot of this down.
At what point do you start to get concerned about the Phoenix premium to Stamp and the other Western BTC-USD exchanges?
Well, I'll get concerned when it's more than, say, 3%. Right now it's less than 1%, which is, by the way, happens all the time. So I'm not terribly fussed about it yet. But we'll see. We're working on it. We're in touch with our biggest customers on this, and I'm going to put up some type of notice, kind of explaining what we know, what we don't know. Hopefully in a couple of hours. This too shall pass, and I hope that things like having audited financials will help us with banking relationships in the future. We are looking at other licensing regimes around the world. We've been looking at doing a bunch of things here to improve the reputational risk that banking us might pose to some banks. So we are, we're working very diligently on this as much as possible. So.
Are there any efforts to organize with the other exchanges in the industry to lobby for these efforts to, about how the USD could, because everybody could just start trading on the euro instead, or you could use this innovation argument.
I think that there is interest in that. And I think that the thing to do is not to lobby the banks; it's to lobby policymakers. So I think that there's a lot of interest in that. It'll take time, but nobody wants to raise their hand and put in sort of everybody that basically has banking right now offshore is doing so. Basically, they're in some sort of don't ask, don't tell kind of arrangement with their banks, generally speaking, and. Nobody wants to raise their hand and say, "Yeah, I want to fight this," because they don't want to jeopardize their existing relationships, or bring attention to themselves. The other thing too is that U.S. dollar markets are. I mean, it's going to become increasingly difficult to run U.S. dollar markets from outside the United States, and even within the United States, the headaches in banking are really substantial, and maybe it needs to trade against. Maybe the principal markets have to change. Maybe it's going to become yen. Maybe it'll become euro. Swiss francs might be a good one. I don't know.
If you had to pick one today, which one do you think it would be? For your own convenience. For your convenience.
Well, I think the one that will present the least problems on a go-forward basis will likely be yen, just because of its sort of the legalized nature of Bitcoin there. So, but yen creates so you have to make sure that. I mean, the problem is that not a lot of people are denominated in yen outside of Japan, right? So at least euro is a large block, But I'll tell you something. I'm very doubtful about Bitcoin's sort of official position in the Eurozone going forward. I mean, the EU Parliament has been pretty negative on Bitcoin, and I would not be surprised if we start seeing the same shit with banks handling euros as we're seeing with U.S. dollars.
I guarantee it's going to happen because the U.S. can put more pressure on Europe than they can Japan for that situation.
Right. So I would say, that, if there's going to be any regime where I think that yen and I think Swiss francs.
Do you guys talk to the Japanese government at all?
The government? No.
Because I think they need Bitcoin as much as, say, Bitcoin needs another currency pair. Japan needs another industry. They have so much unemployment. Like, they need something in Japan, and Bitcoin could be it.
Well, I mean, Bitcoin's tiny compared to any real solutions for that. But look, I think that they're very, very positively disposed toward Bitcoin as an industry, right? So
call up Abe. He'll probably take your call.
We have irons in the fire. We're fine on that front. It's really just a question of well, I mean, we're going to continue to try to fight for dollars, but I think we have to add dollar pairs, other pairs, and then allow people to exchange currency. So, we're gonna offer. Tether's also going to be. We've been planning on kind of pushing Tether Euro anyway, but now this may be an opportunity to press for yen and other currencies. So, we'll see.
Satoshi would want Bitcoin yen.
Maybe.
Yeah, you just don't end up having all them pairs and then shit liquidity spread out amongst all of them.
Yeah, that's the thing that's one of the reasons why I don't want to do that. But at the same time, unless I've got smooth U.S. dollar banking, I kind of have to do it, right? Because if banking for me is smoother in other currencies, then I have to allow people to trade to that currency and basically withdraw. I mean, I could let them just kind of withdraw and basically say, okay, well, Hong Kong dollars charge it's 25 basis points spread with the bank, and CHF is 40 basis points, and euro is 20 basis points. And let users choose, or I can just let them ultimately trade in that currency, and make the just decide for themselves. I don't know. I mean,
if you had to have another, oh, never mind. Go ahead, white people.
What did you think about that? Like putting them it's like one book on the back end, so like the liquidity is still concentrated.
Yeah, we would likely run it as a virtual book, if we did it. So there would actually be, as you say, kind of one book, but represented in multiple currencies. In other words, we'll market make, based upon our bank spread, what our bank will convert at. And then presumably other people will step in and make better markets, and then we'll reflect those around through other books. We have a plan for that. This is something we've been thinking about for a while. So it's just.
And I'm gonna tell you true facts for Bitcoin. I think Bitfinex and Coin going head to head for dominance in Japan. I want to see that fight. I want to see that fight more than seeing what's his name rematch with the Mexican cat.
McGregor, Mayweather.
Yeah, Mayweather, Pacquiao. I'd rather see Bitfinex Coin than Pacquiao Mayweather.
Fuck Pacquiao Mayweather. We want fucking McGregor and Mayweather.
McGregor would get rocked, nigga. It's not even a fight.
Yeah, Mayweather's gonna kick his ass.
Yeah, if it's boxing, it's fucking gone.
Dude, he's 40 though, Mayweather.
BFX versus Coin in the land of the rising sun. I want to see that. Because let's think about it. If you're talking about the books, right? Because I agree with Flipper, and we understand that situation. If you had dollar Bitcoin and euro Bitcoin, that would be worse than dollar Bitcoin, JPY Bitcoin.
Sheffield could organize the Japanese translation. Why would you?
Do you really want to let Sheffield near words?
He'll know Japanese people, won't he? Actually, Verse speaks Japanese. He could do it.
Why is Muginski surprised?
Phil, the mixed books that you said when it would be going live, if it goes live.
I mean, maybe within a week or two.
I mean, you're mixing then all currency into one book. Which conversion rate? Is it the current FX or is it daily?
I mean, we'll take the US dollar book and we'll reflect it into other currencies, and we'll fade the bid and the ask by the net spread that the bank will pay. So in the case of, I mean, it's not going to be ideal, but at least there's a base level for people to trade against, which is to say that, likely for euro, probably be around 20 basis points on either side, so 40 basis points net spread between the bid and the ask with the bank. Now that said, so that means we'll take the US dollar book and we'll basically reflect it in euro, turn it to euros based on the midpoint, and then lift the offers by 20 basis points and drop the bids by 20 basis points. So if somebody wants to hit one of those, then they'll atomically remove it off the other book. We'll give you euros, and then we have to, but we're going to have to do an operation with the bank to get you those euros.
Man, you guys are going to be the biggest remittance provider in the world.
Yep. You're going to be a Forex here. You start doing that.
Yeah, I mean...
You got to do it. You got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
I will tell you that, it's really just frustrating that that we're kind of... This is something we've thought about for a while, but now our hand has been kind of forced. But, I just don't understand. Yeah, well, I do understand what's going on here. It's just really bad policy in the U.S. But what they're doing by banks not servicing MSBs, they are just forcing a lot of this business underground. They're exchanging transparency for lack of transparency, because
Could that be the point?
Yeah, well, I mean,
So people are wondering why you guys don't just buy a bank and be a bank. Is that an option?
Yeah, you don't think we thought about that?
Yeah,
So,
well, let's hear. Why not?
Okay, well, we are looking at the fintech national bank charter in the U.S. It's still under review by the OCC, but that might take 9 months to do. Whatever. Yeah, looking at that probably cost $1 million. You have to put up some regulatory capital. You need to hire some people. Not cheap to run, but would be a solution for dealing with U.S. persons. No doubt. The problem is that if we want to send money internationally, we still have to go through a correspondent bank. In order for us, we could always become a correspondent bank. We could hold an account for a foreign bank, but a foreign bank is not going to hold 20, 30, 50, $100 million with us, unless we've got a balance sheet to match it. So it's a kind of a chicken and egg problem there. So the correspondents still are the gatekeepers for dollar flows in and out of the United States and between foreign counterparties. So I don't have a good solution there.
How about those plans for the deliverable options? What's new with that?
That's been totally put on the back burner.
more pressing matters have.
Yeah, I want to do it. It's just, and I think it'd be really cool. I don't see it as a huge moneymaker at first, so it's kind of deprioritized against us now. If we get into the summer months and things are slow, and we have everything else is chugging along, and summer's actually a great time to do dev work because it's just kind of seasonally slower. But we'll see. I mean, I'm very keen on it. We've done a bunch of work on it already, but
have you talked to BBVA at all? Have they been? I mean, they seem to really support innovation in fintech and be a little bit more.
You know what? So does Wells Fargo. The issue is not. There's just a big difference between what the bank is doing on the investment side and innovation side versus what their compliance guys are saying and doing. On that side of the business. They might as well be completely two different banks. I mean, Santander is trying to create basically like a Tether type product for their customers, but they won't bank anybody like Tether. Let's put it that way.
What about the overhaul of the swap system? I remember you want to put like a proper order book and stuff like that.
Well, we are making incremental improvements to that. So that has been changing and improving, and I think there'll be another set of upgrades within the next month or so.
Have you tried? What about North Korea? Maybe they'll be willing to offer their currency and banking system.
Nigeria.
I'm just saying, we need liquidity.
Going
I don't give a fuck
with
who
gold.
is providing the fiat channel. Just call Kim Jong-il. What's it called? Jong-un.
You could just exchange Bitcoin for gold. Just mail gold to doorsteps.
Why do you need such a useless shit? Bitcoin is better.
Yeah, I agree with Swap, man. I would use the North Korean.
Well, we could just like take over the whole country and just make it all like full Bitcoin and just
this again.
We could kill two stones.
Guys,
kill two birds, one stone.
I'd love to hang out and chew the fat, but I have to gotta get back to work. Are there any other questions? Anything specifically you guys want me to answer? No. I will be putting up an announcement in a little bit, kind of describing exactly where we're at. I appreciate everybody's patience. For those of you that are waiting for withdrawals. But, we are going to get through this. I can promise you that.
Well, we, as always, appreciate you coming by and being open and discussing things directly with the community. Great.
And I don't take any of the trolling personally, by the way. So.
Bye bye.
No, look, guys, I'm sorry. I've been meaning to poke my head in here. It's just been non-stop. But I will, try to poke my head back in here tomorrow. And
when we troll like that, it's basically like kids trying to get daddy's attention. We got to do something to get.
Well, it's funny because like I had Chris, I think, dude, you need to get in here. I'm like, well, and I get it, you guys. The more extraordinary claims get invented, and I'm like, okay, all right, I'm coming. So here I am, and thanks guys for listening. PM me with any specific questions you might have. Email me to whatever. I mean, I'll try to help where I can. But I'll be back in here soon. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
All right.